PM, time is yours.
Check. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Your preference, feel free to unmute yourself. If you put it in the text box, probably I won't be able to see it at all, or raising hands and whatnot. Exclusively unmute, but do not badge here. Um, okay. Um, Begin my speech in three, two, one. I think two setups in order to make sure that this debate is clear as as clear as it is. Firstly, this house prefers a world motion. Therefore, it means like since the beginning of time, things like beauty standards, or seeing people as more attractive as other individuals do not exist. Whatnot. It also means like the creation of beauty standards, the creation of beautification products will not exist, or even stories like about Snow White or beautiful individuals will not exist. More likely than not, because without the existence of a more attractive individual, there's no such thing as beauty standards and so on and so forth. But secondly, I'd argue that what does it mean for equally objectively attractive? Means like, for example, you cannot differentiate between each individual which is more pretty and whatnot. You will mostly think that all of them are equal, and you will think that most of them are equal. You will not decide whether one is more beautiful or one is more ugly within each other. But lastly, I still argue that things like self-personalization still exist, even if objectively equal, even though equally might mean things like everybody look the same and whatnot, and you cannot differentiate that. I think there are other ways to personalize yourself, things like personal identity, things like sexual identity, or even the way you dress, something as simple as that. So to an extent, personalization is okay, but I'll try to mitigate on why then things like equality without the beauty standard is something that is most important in this particular debate. Therefore, I'll just bring one thing in to ensure that open government wins from PM speech. I think that equality will be the most important thing, and why the equality will be achieved under outside of the house. Two reasons here. Firstly, difference in attractive scale that exists in status quo, where one is deemed to be more pretty than the other, results in different opportunities for each individual, especially the job market and whatnot, right? This looks like more attractive individuals usually have more wide array of jobs, like modeling, sales department, which are usually high-paying jobs to begin with, and is inaccessible to those individuals who do not have who don't have the capacity or don't have the pleasure in doing so. But secondly, this also means usually how individuals socialize with each other is based on how attractive certain individuals are. This is why, for example, individuals who are less attractive are more like than not aren't able to socialize, whether it is through relationships, through romantic relationships, or just basically being friends and whatnot, or just basically hang out and whatnot, right? Because there will always be stigma that things like being pretty is to an extent it's hard work to begin with, right? Things like if you are ugly, most likely not, you haven't showered, you never shampooed, you never took a bath. Well, meanwhile, we do still argue that most of these things are usually the result of things like birth lottery. Things are outside of your control and whatnot. But note that this is also being perpetuated by mainstream media by saying that you can be pretty and whatnot. Therefore, if you are not pretty and whatnot, it is mostly your fault and whatnot. Therefore, it is something that's very bad to blame these individuals to begin with. This makes it important for us to mitigate this kind of harms, this differentiation and whatnot, right? Because number one, these kind of things is not within your consent or isn't within your agency to begin with, right? Simply because things like birth lottery means, for example, certain individuals needs to live with with lower standards of beauty, lower standards of attractiveness to begin with, which is something that's super hard to change. But number two, even if you can change this kind of beauty, for example, it usually takes huge sum cost. Hence, it makes it exclusive to only those who can do it, who are rich enough to do it, who can spend thousands of dollars in order to buy skincare and do plastic operation, plastic surgery, and so on and so forth. Therefore, even if you are able to do it, I think it is still harmful because it only helps individuals who are very rich to begin with. But most importantly, I'd argue mostly individuals who are less attractive usually comes from underprivileged backgrounds who do not have the capacity to beautify themselves, to buy skincare products and whatnot. Lastly, then, why then this part of the argument wins from Prime Minister's speech? There are three structural reasons here. Number one, I'd argue that this is the only way to fix things like beauty standards to begin with, which I do agree that to an extent progress exists to begin with, right? Firstly, because this has purpose of the motion, in open government, there's no such thing as beautification, as beauty in general. Therefore, beauty standard that is engraved in status quo throughout human history, basically human instincts to begin with, will no longer exist to begin with. Exactly because yeah, you won't see anything. If co-opposition wants to argue, there's progress and whatnot, they need to argue why then these kind of human instincts, they're embedded within human beings in itself, can be mitigated, can be thrown away easily. But B, things like progress do exist, but it is super slow, which means you need to let others who are less attractive to suffer more, to not be able to get jobs, to not be able to get a better relationship, exactly just because they're not that attractive. Their pools of relationships are usually limited to the ones who are the same value as they are. They don't have the same pool as people who are more attractive and so on and so forth, which is totally unfair, which is inherently racist and should be condemned at the very beginning, right? Therefore, you should not let other people suffer. But second reason why this is winning, I think as time goes on, beauty standard is worsened because of things like tech, which is a preemptive towards opposition case. Firstly, the accessibility of beautification of tech through technology means that there is justification of beauty standard by saying, because everybody can do this, therefore it is okay for beauty standard to exist because it is way more accessible. But we do know that it's not, because there is demand. I think there is still incentive for huge corporation to make this to an extent still very pricey and whatnot. But B, I'd argue that things like plastic operation heightens the ceiling. The fact that Kardashians with their good bodies and whatnot means that you can go above and beyond that what God intended for you to become, what nature intended you to become, be more artificial and whatnot. Therefore, you can go above and beyond. It means that it heightens, the ceiling of beauty standards and whatnot. But thirdly, but C, there's no incentive for corporation to stop innovation of to make beautification to technology, since there is huge demand. Means funding in open government case, funding for beautification can be done for better stuff throughout the ages, things like social movement and whatnot. But lastly, why this is winning, means that it's more opportunities for those who are marginalized, those who are usually not attractive, who came from rural backgrounds, who don't have the capacity to do this since the beginning of time. They have way more opportunities. We protect more individuals throughout the entire history of humankind. Never been prouder.
Thank you very much for your speech. Calling upon the first speaker from opening opposition.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
You're audible and visible.
All right. Wait. QI preference. Please just unmute yourself. Wait, let me set my timer. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. To value beauty within a society, it's never about the idea of making everyone look the same or making everyone equally objectively in the same level of attractiveness. To value the beauty in the society, it's about how you grew up, seeing different standards, seeing different people, seeing their mind whatsoever, that you can always have this agency and power to create some sort of new standards, some sort of acknowledgement for the beauty that exists in the current status quo or even the life. This is why a lot of people grew up favoring a lot of picture, drawer, or even poetry, because simply human inherently by nature love whatever that perfectly appealing upon their eyes. This is a dishouse promotion. We think that OG is unclear in terms of what kind of world they're willing to actually live within in the current status quo, or even in the near future. So first, assuming that it can be accurately measured, we think that the world under OG will look like that everyone is first attractive in terms of physically, because attractiveness is something that is basically very absurd even in the current status quo. You can see someone that is physically, for example, not fit any kind of quote unquote beauty standard, but they seem attractive because they have a very good mindset. For example, in the future, they have a very good leadership or whatsoever, right? So assuming that the world that the government want to build is basically the world where everyone looks the same, adhere to the certain standard, and everyone is basically not diverse in terms of, in order to look attractive or whatsoever. What are the harms within this kind of community or even the world that's been built by government is this. Two main arguments that they build. Because first, marginalized people because they got stigmatized for being considered ugly in current status quo. Second, commercialization of beauty standard beautification whatsoever. In terms of birth lottery, we think that it still exists, and we have to actually learn and accept that it's part of the life that is being so bitter since we are birthed, right? Privileges exist anyway. Maybe in your side of the house, you're not considered, even if you're considered attractive or whatsoever, you cannot live the good life because you're simply poor, or you're not coming from the silver spoon family or whatsoever. Under our side of the house, we think that it's even better. Maybe because you're pretty but you're poor, you still can get that modeling job or whatsoever. It's part of the human life. It's part of the competitive advantage that human could get, for example. But the second thing, in terms of the commercialization of the beauty standard beautification, we think that yes, we accept that there are so many harms. For example, like the over capitalizing of the women's body or whatsoever. But under that note, we think that first it's okay because the harm is still there, but the benefit is also like so much coming from so much more, because as long as people get empowered, because you can buy any makeup, even you can consider beauty in the society, it's more than enough in our side of the house. But the second thing, it's still worth to celebrate it because it's accessible anyway. Makeup, whatever products that being sold in the companies or whatsoever, is the most accessible way for people to be beauty, or even for people to be considered as pretty or whatsoever. So what are the scope in this debate? We think that first, we will define, even give to you the pursuit of become attractive that is very admirable, or even something that is important in the current status quo in society. So, but before that, why this standard exists anyway? We think that it exists because inherently human nature are subjective. Even if you were setting the world saying that everyone will look the same objectively, this one is attractive, this one is not whatsoever, we think that the standard will exist anyway because people have the tendency to being bored or whatsoever to any kind of certain customs in the society, or even any kind of thing that been set up before by the previous society. This is why there are so many revolutions, there are so many movements coming into the society, because people admire or even acquire that there's something harmful in the past and they want to move better in the near future, right? So pursuit of become attractive, how people set a beauty standard first, and how is it very inclusive now. Taking a note that whatever happens, like body positivity campaign or whatsoever, can only be exist because people only admire one certain beauty standard in the past. We do not say that beauty standard is like having all benefits, it having the harm itself, but we think that it's still neutralized or even can be favorable in the very first place. Human nature value physical appearance. They love seeing things that is actually beautiful. This is explained the human's relation to art, poetry, or whatever, because people have different way to perceive beauty. I can say that, for example, I can say that people the perceive of the beauty from people in the Africa, for example, and Asian people might be different, and it's worth to celebrate anyway because it's diverse, right? But how the world is basically very progressive nowadays, because how we appreciate beauty always goes from one type, it's got to be judged first in the very first place. We think that it's some sort of how you call it, like a majority versus minority people, or how one person that is powerful deciding, this is the most favorable looks or whatever, influence other. Hence beauty standard exists in the very first place. Why it is not wrong at first, because first, I think that beauty standard can borrow a sense of acknowledgement to any kind of beauty standard that now exists. People right now acknowledge that having monolith is okay and even beautiful, and could become like beauty standard precisely because people judge it at the very first place. People can find it beauty only because it exists anyway. So the diversity is never a problem here. On the judgment or whatsoever, we think that it could exist anyway. But second thing, that why we need diversity and why the world and the government is very harmful in the very first place later. Because first, we think that it's very important to give a room always to, there will be a necessity to actually give a room always the new type or to be to the new type of looks that first or once considered strange, right? We think that we delete the barrier and reducing the barrier, because what happened on the other side of the house, once one creature or one human is considered strange, for example, that actually outlier from all of these objectively beauty standard, they will consider it as strange and the judgment will happen anyway. But even if this take a lot of time, the fight to body positivity and all is worth to celebrate, because first, humans basically acknowledge that they are diverse and more to acknowledge in the future. But second thing, more room to different opinion, because now people are get used to actually correcting each other's opinion or even perceive the beauty itself and perspective and improvement within oneself in the society. We say in the societal level it's better because people now improving and willing to learn, but in the individual level we think that it is within the rights of everyone to want to be better than other. It's one of the metric at how you winning in life, because you do not want to suffer, because you do not want to trap into the poverty or whatsoever. Why it can be justified then? Two things. First, it's inherent human nature to always want to be the best version out of themselves. It is not about comparing you to your past self anymore, but also to the society, because it's one of the metric at how you winning in life. But the second thing, the satisfaction is worth to celebrate, because that you come after you reach your goals, because you become skinnier than before, for example. It is something that always can make someone happy, and we think that this is worth to celebrate and absence exclusively under the government side of the house. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. Calling upon the PM to respond.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. POI unmute. Do not pager. I'm happy to accept to POI. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine today you wake up and you see your face in the mirror. There's another pimple, and you notice that your face is a little bit more fat, more chubby. And when you open your social media and you scroll, that one viral influencer who everyone talks about appears in your FYP, and you wonder why his face so small, why his face is so symmetrical, and you wonder why his structure of the face is so perfect that you wonder what else should you do to have the more symmetrical face, to burn double chin fat, and you finally decide to not eat breakfast and lunch today because eating equals to guilt. Eating means that you are going to get fatter, for example. Panels, this is what I feel every day because I'm being bullied during middle high school. When everyone tell me that how big my nose is, they tell that it's disgusting, that it is full of pimple of my face, and they tell me how fat I am. And now when I finally go a diet and I start styling myself, for example, I start receiving appreciation that people like the way I look, and they start to give compliments about how I style myself because they think that it's very attractive, right? It shaped my fear that until now, if I am ugly, it equals to mean that people will not like me because only attractive people are accepted in the society. Which is why until now, I am afraid to eat too much because I'm afraid to gain weight, for example. Sure, it might be true that there's an incentive for me to improve myself, but the question is, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to improve myself? Because basically there's nothing wrong about my look if there's no standard that measures my look, right, judges? So in a world where people are all equally attractive, people don't have to be restricted by beauty standard because there's simply no the concept of the beauty, which means that people are by nature understand that there's no concept of commentary on your body, face, no labelization of looks, chubby cheek, thin face, hourglass body. There's no who are more handsome, beautiful, ugly, and etc. You don't need to improve because there's nothing wrong with you. This is the thing that OO never answered, right? Because at best, OO is just in denial by saying that, you know what, attractive is so absurd. You can define attractive by yourself. But we have said that as long as look exists, which means that there will be standard to measure how attractive you are, right? They need to define the standard, not how the concept of attractiveness, for example, because there will always be people who neglected from a standard, for example, right? They say that, double monolith is already accepted in society, right? But whatever the monolith, it doesn't define you as a person, right? Because if you have single monolith or double monolith, for example, it doesn't define how good you are as a person. Just because you have a different look, for example, doesn't mean that you are better than anyone, right? Because we are all born in this condition. We can decide how do we want to look, for example. Why do we even need a judgment for our monolith? Because it doesn't correlate to how good we work at school. Good we are at work, for example. Opposition said that beauty might be a comparative advantage. Firstly, this is a very niche benefit, right? How accessible that is, yet to prove. Secondly, this doesn't negate our harm, right? Because our principles still stand. We say that people who are not are also insecure about looks. Look at how people are oftentimes who have money, who have privileges to access to beauty clinic, are oftentimes the most people who are obsessed about their look. For example, they invest in makeup, even though they have gone through tons of plastic surgery. For example, they still think that their face is not good. For example, so as long as looks exist, people will still be insecure about their look. For example, so this is something that is inseparable about OO benefit, right? Then OO asked me, like, what makes attractiveness is like for people to be able to judge poetry, scenery, and etc. I am unclear to what degree the ability to interpret this is accessible for everybody. But here's the thing: you like scenery because it makes you feel good, right? On our side, people can still feel good when they enjoy interact with some people, because maybe your boss is not like other cis male boss who is sexist, but he respects your boundaries. He asks about your consent. For example, this is the moment when you understand that he is attractive because he is respecting your personal value. For example, not some people who is attractive because he wears just, or he wears, for example, very expensive clothing. For example, these are very different surface of level of judgment, right? So these are the classification of actions which is contingent on morality. You feel good because your morality is being respected. For example, people can still invest in spirituality and personality instead because it is something that is far more accessible. But on our side, people who on their side of the house, there are two people who look good and look bad. For example, even the people who look bad is more, green flag, but people simply don't like them because they think that their look is disgusting. For example, these are the judgment that is often very wishy-washy, right? The thing is sure that looks are subjective, and you can make a narrative that everybody is equally attractive. But as long as there's a standard, we think that there will always be a judgment that exists to judge how you look. There's an exact measurement to score your effort on making yourself more attractive according to the standard the majority upon, right? So there's measurement about the ideal body proportion, that there's ideal things about your face symmetrical or not, for example. So especially with the rise of social media, we are every day being exposed to a massive quantity of contents relating to looks. For example, everybody cannot get away from makeup if they want to get into the camera, for example, and everybody cannot get away from having facial problem like acne, komedo, for example, because companies are able to capitalize that by saying that it is disgusting, it is something that should be treated. That is why they promote skincare, they promote beauty services like clinics and hospital. But it's why many people are willing to go into like clinics, for example, to inject Botox, for example, to inject implants, etc. Many people are willing to spend tons of money on skincare because they think having acne in your whole face is disgusting. But here's the unfair thing, right? Innately, people cannot decide how they want to look. They cannot decide their skin color. Maybe they have just unstable hormones, which is why they got more oily face and more acne, right? They just have asymmetrical face the moment they are born because of their bone structure, for example. These are something that they cannot be controlled. And the bad thing is, most of the times, look are contingent on societal interpretation. You cannot just say that people can still be confident and don't give a fuck whether they go to street and whether how people will perceive them. For example, this is simply not true, because if standard exists, which means that it's easier to highlight people who are within that standard, who are within the standard of attractiveness, which is why you're going to neglect people who are not within the standard. Which is why by time there's stigma, like people with tattoo, people with resting bitch face, or people who have botak hairstyle, for example, or generally the traits that you look, for example, of certain minority that is being antagonized. Which is why there's a certain kind of like antagonization towards certain minority that you think that they are bad people just by looking at it, for example. Meanwhile, people who look like Opa Korea, who are clean, looks like a kind person, for example, are the people you think by first impression is good, for example. But which is when how people look are affected by the judgment of their personality, by their values, for example. So if people are wear crop top, she's not a good girl. Particularly because Indonesia is so conservative, for example. But the way people dress doesn't actually reflect people's morality, which is why we want to erase the looks and actually for the judgment, for people who have better personality, or people to actually have a good morality, for example, right? So exactly because this is something that might blind people judgment, we want to erase this in the end of the day, right? So look doesn't have to be prioritized. Looks doesn't reflect someone's capacity. We are happy to defend a word when people don't have depth in looks, for example. So this creates a more internalization, right? So it's like a room full of people, whatever you want to wear, t-shirt, crop top, or even Y2K style of shirt, that is still fine because you understand you like those style, because it gives you personal satisfaction of how you want to wear, for example, right? What we want is that, regardless of the practicality, we argue that by principle, look is something that doesn't deserve to be comment judged by people, because we do not have the consent to be judged by other people. We are very proud to be OJ in this debate.
Thank you very much for the speech calling upon DLO to close the debate in opening half.
Chat, I hope I'm audible and visible. Do you tell me if my connection is lost or in any way, shape, or form I am stuttering? POI, just unmute yourself. I will start. An integral part of human life is their interaction with other people, how they perceive other people, how they value other people based on what they see, what they interact through, things like that. What is lost in the world that is trying to be constructed by the government team is the sense of perception of beauty. Beauty standards, sure, we have defined that it's about physical looks, basically. But a lot of cultures of personal values, a lot of ideas stems from that you want to fulfill the standards on your own mind and also on what society views as inherent within human nature to look at beauty. You know, art, poetry, all sorts of things. There's an inherent and integral part of how humanity proceeds with their life. In the world of the government team, this seeking of beauty, this pursuit of aesthetics are lost, and there's something that we regret. The loss of beauty means that there is becoming more beautiful, becoming more attractive. Attractiveness, as my first speaker has again stated, sure, the first baseline is coming from physical attractiveness, physical stuff, whatever. But a lot of things are contingent upon the idea that beauty standards and ideas of beauty exist in order for other kind of beauty to also shine. If the government wants claims that in their world, people are going to see beauty in sincerity, people are going to see beauty in good personalities, all of that. In our world, beauty in sincerity can be valued so much more when it's something that you choose to highlight. There are people that is attractive and also very kind. But when people see themselves as not particularly very attractive, they try to add their own personal values in other ways. I don't know, adding their own, becoming much more kinder, becoming much more a better person, becoming much more sincere in their world. No, thank you. Become much more sincere in their work, things like that. All this is contingent on the fact how we see ourselves in comparison to the society that surrounds us. And all of this, very much integral to it, is the idea how we see beauty in us and beauty in others in society itself. This is something that is lost in their work. Even if we say that the idea that diversity is bad and pure single objective matrix is good, that is simply not true. If the main benefit they are trying to claim is that by removing all of these beauty standards, we are creating a much more inclusive society, that is simply not true. My first speaker has already stated that inclusivity exists in our world because there is difference in the very first place. The idea that because there is beauty standards that is very diverse in the status quo is being disregarded by the government team simply by saying that, oh, beauty standards is harmful and we prefer a world where there are no beauty standards whatsoever. In our world, beauty standards exist and it's very diverse. When there are people or there are certain things that is viewed as not aesthetics, there are groups of people that support that kind of aesthetics to be something that is great. There are so many alternate movements in aesthetics, you know, emo, goth, punks, whatever, Y2K, classics, whatever kind of aesthetics that you may think of. Even naturally non-conforming beauty standards people, like artists like Danny DeVito or like Jim Carrey, are seen as, you know, attractive simply because people see all of these kind of things that are diverse. And they did not put a single standard on all of this. The standard is diverse. This is the thing that only exists because you see beauty in a lot of ways. Humanity is not a monolith. Humanity is not a single-minded thing. This is the kind of society that the government is trying to create. When you fail to see beauty in other person through their first glance, you are more, no thank you, you are less likely to try to get to know this person. You are less likely to even care about this person because there's nothing that excites you from coming to this person. How likely are you going to expect sincerity, genuine kindness, all of that when you just see yourself in their face, for example? That sense of difference, and because we human, we naturally empathize with other people, we try to bridge that difference in a way that we accept that difference, or even if we reject that difference, we understood that that difference is inherent. In our society that's progressing right now, this kind of accepting difference is integral because simply there is no
POI.
objective singular standard on what is actually beautiful. Because there are no people that is, just because I am wearing glasses, I am not beautiful to you, does not mean that other people don't see me as beautiful, for example. This sense of diversity is lost, and what do they gain in the government team? No discrimination. Our world right now is progressing towards that non-discrimination in a much more coherent and cohesive way because everyone contributes to that idea. Body positivity movement accepts people that, I don't know, half of their face is skeleton, for example, because of some disability that they have. They accept this kind of thing because people are progressing and people actually empathize with each other. In a world where everyone is just the same, how are you likely going to empathize with that kind of difference when the difference is not visible in the
POI.
very first place? I can simply empathize with people in the racial struggle for righteousness because I see that they are different and they are not conventionally attractive to my standards. I can see Black people in America as having this kind of racial struggles that is very, very deeply rooted because I see that they are different. In their world, that difference in beauty is not there. You can just understand that this person is a man, then I don't know, the racial standard is still there because it's deeply historical and not just based on looks, but you find it quite hard to empathize with this kind of thing, to bridge that difference, because there's no difference to be bridged that is visible in the very first place. So what have we proved to you, ladies and gentlemen? As the opening opposition team, we champion a world where differences are readily visible. And when that difference is readily visible, we as humans that are naturally empathic to one another, we try to, if we are the different one, we try to build our own personal value to bridging that gaps. If we are the conforming one, we are trying to include them in our society because that's what actually happens in the world right now. Inclusive society, more idea on beauty standards that are different, that are alternative, all that sorts of thing. That is exactly missing. That beauty of bridging difference is missing in their world because everyone is just the same. Even if we are removing segregation and all of that, that's also going on in the status quo right now. In their world, segregation might be even worse because it's based on something that is even beyond your control. Wealth, for example, class, social class and stuff. In our world, beautification is readily available. Feeling empowered by looking good. I buy this clothes for 5,000 rupiah in a toko loa, and I feel great while wearing it. There is empowerment that I get from beautificating myself. You cannot say that personalization exists in your world because people don't even see beauty standards at the end of the day. So proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for the speech. Reminder for everyone to clearly state first the POI preference, just to make it a lot easier as well for everyone to understand and to respect each other's preference. Calling upon the government member to open the debate in closing half.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. POI preference, unmute yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, the fact that in status quo throughout our entire lives have been feeding us contradictory narratives like, one, looks don't matter, it's what the insight that's count, or secondly, but somehow in the same narrative or like in the same world, we're told that you need to take care of yourself because people judge you first glance off of your beauty or like your attractiveness, and that's something that you cannot combat. These contradicting narratives is inherently what something that we do not want in CG. We think that if it doesn't really matter, then your looks, or like this is what people are trying to feed us in status quo. The fact that at the end of the day, your looks doesn't matter, and it's what you should contribute to society and how you treat other people that should matter. Then we would just prefer a world where that attractiveness isn't really a metric that people look for, or where everyone is equally objectively attractive, because then it won't be as confusing in status quo, and this is the only way why we prefer a world reset or why we prefer a world that looks like this, right? Exactly. Just live in a world where attractiveness is equal to all, so it truly does not matter in the end. Vote for CG. But then let's engage a bit with opening opposition. Honestly, at the end of the day, their biggest contribution is to tell you that you get social activism or you get social inclusivity or empathizing with difference is because the difference is there to begin with. Panels, note the fact that their end goal is inclusivity and empathizing with difference is the end and ongoing goal in the world right now, where you can literally have that from the get-go on government side, right? When you literally do not discriminate against someone for how they look, what race they were born in, what social economic statuses they were born in, because everyone is just then pretty or everyone is just attractive. This is a better world that that they want to even live in status quo. So the question then becomes, if the end goal is always inclusivity, and if the end goal is always empathizing with difference, you already get that on closing government's world, right? Why does OO then so hard trying to prove that you need to go through the difference, you need to go through the detrimental like discrimination against like, I'm sorry, less fortunate people or ugly people just to get that quote unquote social activism on your world when you can literally solve it by preferring a world where this is just not a metric in general, right? But how then do we differentiate ourselves with OG before I get into my extension? Is the fact that our opening, to say the least, is very messy and very case to case. They talk about how, people have insecurities or how pretty privileged people can get jobs like models, etc. But that's a very case to case. And we would like to expand it further on our side by just making it broader for the debate. We're going to be talking about, firstly, how society then will function in this world, because I don't think it's depicted enough on our opening. But secondly, how individuals then would perceive themselves on our world and how it's significantly better to what's coming from opposition on, or why it's better than when we prefer the world that we're currently living in right now. But firstly, on how society then will function, three layers to this. One, how society looks like right now, what society looks like in our preferred world, and the comparison then. Firstly, on what society looks like right now, it looks like beauty standards that changes a lot, and it makes a lot of toxic standard for everyone. Not only like not only ugly people, but also pretty people, or like people that are blessed with attractiveness, or blessed with attractiveness in the very first place, right? And I think this is something that's highly disregarded in opening bench. The fact that beauty standards, even throughout time in status quo, changes. So then you can be pretty one day, but not pretty the next day. This is just something that's unfortunately later very dynamic and very volatile to change in status quo, right? And that's exactly what makes beauty standard so time consuming or like so detrimental to opt into, because it constantly changes. Nothing is ever consistent, and that's what something we don't want, right? It's so easy to shame other people as well as to how they deal and how they cope with the changes of like beauty standard that constantly happens. One, they get surgery. Hey, why are you putting flashes in your body? They don't take care of yourself. They don't take care of themselves enough via skincare or makeup. Oh my god, they're a pick me because they're not opting into the beauty standard. There's literally no way for the people that in status quo to win, or like how they cope with it is just never really enough for society. You will never win. Society favors a very specific people or a very specific standard that, let's just be real, no one can attain to, or even if they attain to it in a certain period of time, it'll never be really enough. So then what will society look like in our preferred world? Beauty standards cease to exist, panels. No conflicting narratives that come from this. They're just simply non-existent, right? What matters is how then you treat others and how you contribute back to society later. There's no more intimidation coming from these people that also is benefited from the illusion that comes with attractiveness, i.e. them having money, they should be feared, etc. These things are just not a thing because everybody is attractive, everybody is intimidating, therefore everyone is benefited by that, right? So let's compare them. It'll be better on our world because however society favors you, it'll be purely because of how you act or contribute back to society, not because of birth lottery that the majority of people don't get in the very first place, but also it's not reliant on the fact that the beauty standard is stable enough for you to opt into, or won't change enough for you to completely alter your body the next generation or the next decade to come, right? But that's before my second contribution, your POI.
What are the exact measurement happens under your side of the house? Because objectivism is not the same as no standard at all, but there's one single absolute truth.
I want you to read the motion carefully again. It's assuming it can be accurately measured. I don't have to prove to you the mechanism then on how it can be accurately measured. We just need to understand that in this world, everyone's objectively attractive. That means you, me, Louis, Faisal, everyone in this debate is attractive. I don't need to prove how then it can be accurately measured because it's assumed to be accurately measured. But secondly, how then individuals perceive themselves in our world? Three layers. One, how individuals see themselves in status quo, how individuals see themselves in this world, and the comparison. Firstly, how do individuals see themselves in status quo? You're never really enough. That's the sad reality to it. Living in a world where it's only a rat race as to who can fulfill the current beauty standard better just makes it so that you are never really enough. You're only ever enough when you're secure of yourself and how you look. But honestly, not a lot of people have that luxury of stability in mental health, or like the stability that they're secure in their life and that everything, even if the beauty standard says otherwise, that you're just secure with how you look. Insecurity in relationships happen very, very often too. Just because another person is prettier and is talking to your partner, it's easy for you to go into a loophole and every single progress that you've made in like being secure of yourself. You're ashamed as to how you are made is essentially what's happening in status quo, right? So what will happen in our world when we prefer this role reset? Self-care comes in how then you can contribute back to the people surrounding you, how you can contribute into group projects, etc. There's no pressure to conform to something that is so dynamic and something that is so tiring to keep up with, because let's just be honest, it's not sustainable even in status quo. That's where there's a lot of mechanisms in place to exactly abolish the thought that looks actually matters, right? Vote for a world where it's more forgiving to the individuals. Vote for CG. That's all for my speech.
Thank you very much for your speech. Calling upon the opposition member to respond.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Minum air bentar ya, Kak. Wait. Aduh, wait. Muka gue kagak kepin. Udahlah, nggak tahu. POI preference. Just unmute yourself. Not sure mau accept siapa. Lihat mood. Trigger warning, maybe gonna talk something sensitive about not intended to be offensive. So, very sorry. This is just for the necessity of the debate. Gender pronouns, he or him, reminder, POI unmute. Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Opening debate is deadlock. If you want to blame commercialization and accessibility, blame capitalism panels. Because you can be beautiful and handsome if you have money. You can buy skincare on TikTok shop. Scientific advertise is everywhere. You can go to gym and buy processed protein like Kean. So this is not very important to be debated. Hence, just kick them. But before of that, I'm gonna respond into OG. They have two major points on this debate. First, talking about how this gives different opportunities because of different beauty standard. Second, talking about neglect people who don't have. It will make people be neglected if you don't fit with the beauty standard. First, about different opportunities. Two response. A, no. I think at the end of the day, good company only require your skill in the sense about how you can do a great Excel, about how you can do a good coding like Ken in his internship and whatnot, right? So I think this is a very wrong characterization coming from them. But B, even if that's the case, yeah, congrats, you leave bad corporation and that's a benefit, ladies and gentlemen. We flip this. But when they talk about, oh yeah, this make people be neglected who don't fit into the beauty standard. Two response. Hey, I think people are not that evil like Albert explains. Some people also understand the condition because why? Because most people are born with a normal standard of beauty. 80% of people have an asymmetric face. Only less than 2% people in this world have dimple. Hence, I think if that's very unlikely, if these people actually very unlikely to bully you because their look is also be normal aja. But B, even if that's the case, congrats again, you have successfully find out if these people are so bad, just leave them and find good friends. Yeah, panels, I'm going to explain to you how does the objective in this motion means. Objective means that everyone has to look the same accurately. Since the matrix of scoring must likely be high, be on the heights of body, face shapes, body shapes, or jawline. In a world where everyone is equally attractive, everyone must have the same score, right? Means that all of them are having the same physics. No, the talents are allowed from government. Three things in my speech. First, how do CO embrace individuality? Second, why no taste of beauty from humanity destroy the civilization? Third, why status quo?
POI.
No, first, why is CO embracing individuality? Based on two reasons. First, understand in the status quo, people currently have their own individuality because every single person has a different characteristic, right? This state person to have their own uniqueness. Why this is important? Because we say this individuality is something that is tightly correlated with you represent your own identity, ladies and gentlemen. For the example, my friend is proud to be called Jamet, regardless the stigma, because it represents the Java person. My Nigeria friend feels so optimistic with his dark skin because this is the kind of identity that his ancestors lived and the legacy, and and this is the kind of legacy of him. And Miss Universe of America Latino also be proud with her skin because that's the value that she and her community try to preserve, right? Second, this is important because we create more understanding if there is a various number of characteristics of human being, because this is the origin of human DNA or genetics, which finally make people have more degree of tolerance in order for them to finally respect each other. This feels the process analysis of benefits coming from the opening opposition, right? We say the comparative under the government side, it feels like at the end of the day, you don't matter anymore. When everyone is the same, you cannot feel certain specific uniqueness that you have. You don't know what kind of identity and value that you try to represent because every single person has the same color of skin. Every single person has the same height in order for them to be able to measure every single sports and whatnot. Hence, there is no any single uniqueness and life become mundane, totally mundane under the government side of the house. Second, I'm going to explain to you why knowledge of beauty from humanity will destroy the civilization of humanity historically. Before of that, let me contextualize. Why do humans have beauty standards, ladies and gentlemen? Because as living things, we have to select certain individuals who will be our partner to do reproduction. This is true because our ancestors must have an instinct of survivability. Hence, their brain boosts dopamine hormones to make them fall in love with certain individual. Hence, we are incentivized to breed. Under government side of the house, two scenarios that most likely will be active. First, not interested to bond and form relationships. Since there's no dopamine boost and every single face and body is equal, you don't have any attraction. Hence, humans most likely will just do other things which give them alternative of sense of fulfillment, such as finding delicious foods, living in a comfortable cave, and whatnot. This is dangerous. Since as human, this is the one and only way of survival mechanism by having dopamine to do sexual relationship and be happy when you do it with someone that is beautiful based on your perspective. But second scenario is that you are gonna breed with all of the people that you choose randomly. Why is this bad? Of course, you're gonna increase the massive possibility of sexual transmitted disease, which is totally dangerous as well. Moreover, with the context of the pre-colonial history, people don't know anything about this. They are tended to be infected by this kind of things, and this is totally dangerous for them. How does the impact based on two things? First, there is no standard on which one is handsome and which one is maybe ugly. Hence, finally, you don't have any sense of fulfillment and excitement when you see other individuals. It's hard for you to fall in love since everyone is similar. Understand? Handsome people exist because there is comparative. There is the comparative, which is sorry, ugly person like me. But second, also bad for social interactions. You can look to your friend face. You can look to your friend's face because maybe his forehead is jenong or white like me. You can crush someone because you like his muscular body and her Spanish guitar body or Gapura Kabupaten. Under government, the degree of fulfillment is suddenly lost, and the harm is the radical monotonicity on the civilization of humanity on this earth. This is bad because we say life has already been boring, right? Understand that most of us living in a developing countries, like 80% of the population, and we live in a very mundane daily life. Not really happy, but not really sad. The way we can get fulfillment most of the time is by get addicted to the dopamine and get the social interactions, right? Hence, you give a significant total harm under government side of the house. Last contribution. Why status quo is progressive based on two reasons. First, segmentation of beauty standard exists. What does it look like? If you see ibu-ibu in rural area, in Gang Medan, Hughes Wardah, and Emina, their neighbor will say, OMG, you are so pretty, huh? Me also. I think Albert Ong is so similar with Cha Eun-woo. This is different with Oo. Because Oo say, all people will respect and tolerate. So utopic. In us, you can find someone who appreciates you. B. Hence, I think harm from OG about how people try to plastic surgery, consumerism is wrong. Even if it's true, that might be only 5% people in the world. And why the hell you take care of these people? That's up to them if they obsessed to beauty like Lucinta Luna. They don't take your money. Oppose.
Thank you very much for your speech calling upon the government whip.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. UI preference unmute. Wait. Starting my speech in in 3, 2, 1. One thing that is important here is that when Op is talking about, wow, status quo is already progressive enough, I think it's simple, right? I think it's just how Rene has already said to you that if status quo is progressive, if status quo is progressing to actually eradicate those beauty standards, it means that they are not important in the first place, right? So the long explanation of OO, of CO talking to you about, oh yeah, status quo is progressive enough, and it's actually contradicting what they are trying to explain here, what they are trying to champion here, right? Because what they have to champion is about why beauty standards should actually be celebrated, not that status quo is already progressive enough. But if they want to actually champion that status quo is progressive enough, it means that they don't want the beauty standard itself, no? Because the point of you being progressive, the point of you making a narrative that looks doesn't matter, it means that attractiveness doesn't matter at all, right? So I think that point alone is already enough to actually explain to you that the whole opposition already falls. But let's still engage to them, right? Firstly, to OO. OO come to this debate saying that the campaign of beauty standard is important to actually appreciate people on the first metric, which is appreciation to the people. I think it's very bad that OO is trying to tell you that appreciation can only comes from beauty standard. Because what actually happened is that they will have to comply to the standard first to actually be appreciated then, right? I think even if they want to explain to you that people have different standards, that there are many beauty standards, it means that they still need a standard to be actually be fulfilled first before they are actually appreciated, before if they are seen as beautiful, for example, right? So even if that the people is appreciated on their side, it means that the people that they champion who are being appreciated are the one who can actually fulfill that standard, right? And this is very bad because not everyone can fulfill those kind of standards, right? Yes, status quo is progressive enough. Status quo has much more beauty standards, for example, but all of those beauty standards doesn't fulfill everyone's standard or everyone's view of what is attractive or what is not, right? I think the most simple explanation is that the most simple example is that why people doesn't see furry, for example, or cross-dressing as something that is very appealable to them, right? I think that's something that OO or CO has to tackle in this debate before they can actually say that they are appreciated in the first place, right? But even if they want to say that differences is a product of attractiveness, so it is okay if they are beauty standard. So secondly, on the metric of differences, I think it's completely untrue that differences are a process of attractiveness or beauty standard. I think differences is actually something that comes from within the individual itself. It means that who they are when they are expressing themselves. For example, Rena expressing herself as someone who is emo, or me expressing myself as someone who is chindo, because that's what I am or what Rene is inside of ourselves, right? So if they want to say that uh, differences is the product of this, I think that is completely wrong. But even if we concede that people will be bland, for example, or people will not be different, which is completely untrue because they will still be different. It will be then I think we still concede then. Yeah, we bite the bullet. They will be bland. It will be better then because people are actually assessing others based on what is actually subjective to them or what is actually inside of them in the first place, like because then they won't actually assess people on how they look, for example, on how they conduct themselves in to yeah, how they use makeup, for example, right? I think those things are the most important thing that needs to be clear in this debate, right? So I think the way here is that firstly, on the appreciation itself, we already explained to you why appreciation is better on our side. It is because on our side, everyone who is different will still be appreciated. They will not be judged for expressing from who they are. It means that they can still express themselves and not be judged. But secondly, on the metric of differences, we have already proven to you that differences can still happen on our side, and differences is not a concern of this debate, right? It means that OO and CO exclusivity is already included on our side. It means that on our side, it will still be better. It will on our side, then we don't need those mechanism of progressiveness because the progressiveness already exists in the first place, right? So I think those kind of reasons are already enough. But even then, even if those kind of isn't enough, then if you want to credit CO for their case on talking about STDs, for example, or talking about dopamine, I think this is something that is very situational, right? I think people know not to interact with someone who has STD, for example, or someone who has diseases because they know that those things are bad for them, right? I think it's just a rule of the world. I think it's the rule of the thumb on where you don't interact with dirty things, interact with bad things, for example, because those kind of things are bad for you in the first place. Right? So it's a survival instinct rather than an attractiveness that comes from the people. So what is the proof to use then? It means that the situational case, even that is coming from CO, is already false in this debate, right? So when they say that they cannot fall in love, Rene has already explained to you that people can still express themselves and they can still interact with others. But how are we different or how are we winning this debate and different from OG, right? So firstly, talking about scale, I think the scale is better on our side because OG only come to this debate talking about commercialization, for example, and they are talking about some uh, uh, ugly people which are not being appreciated. But on our side, we actually tell you, firstly, we talk more deeply about how this will affect the people or how this will affect the society, which has a more deep explanation to it and has and which is the missing link on their side, right? That hasn't actually explained to you how the world actually look like. But even if that is not enough, we then have actually explained to you that even if the people are the same, they can still be better on our side, which is exclusive, which is something that only comes from my mouth in this debate, right? Which hasn't come from any other benches, which only CG has already considered. So proud to propose.
Thank you very much for the speech. Before we move on with the opposition whip, I need to go to the bathroom. So give me at least 3 minutes. Yeah, if any of you want to go to the toilet, please go now. But inform me from the chat so I can see it later. Wait a sec. Hi everyone, sorry that it take long. I think Kayan is also here. Yeah, we can start with the opposition whip. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Everyone, thank you for the debate for today. If you want to POI me, please unmute yourself. I will not be able to look at the chat, so I won't be seeing your chat. So just unmute yourself. If I have time, I'll give it to you, but I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, I think that's it. Setting up my timer. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. To quote my favorite supervillain of all time, Syndrome, when everyone is super, no one is. There are two clashes in this debate. The first clash on which side feels the most beautiful. Second clash is on which side forms better social lives for people. I'm going to talk about the first clash first, which is which side feels the most beautiful. I'm going to talk first about opening government. Opening talks this idea about equality, about how bad genetic lottery can give you problems and you have been mistreated because of those. Look, I understand it, but here's how I will respond to it. First of all, most people do not compare themselves to people who are not in the same beauty level that their genetics give. I do not compare myself to Keanu Reeves. I compare my beauty to people who were given a similar hand to me because that's what's realistic and achievable for me. And they also talked about how beauty standards can form a lot of bullying and discrimination and also a lot of insecurity, how waking up having pimples and seeing beautiful celebrities that gets you to start torturing yourself to be like them. And because of your looks. Look, I 100% agree that being bullied because of your looks is a horrible thing. People are dicks. They like to compare themselves and bring down others to make themselves feel better. But I don't see OG does not explain how in a world where beauty standards don't exist, even if that's successful, these bullies will not have any fuel somehow to use as bullying material. There are things such as your hobbies, your wealth and material possessions, your cultural background, your athletic capabilities. These are all things that are worse than looks to be made fun of because it's closer to the heart and more of a part of who you are that you cannot change and it cannot be shaken. And to tackle this insecurity problem in a world where people are insecure by nature. In a world where beauty standards are not available, don't exist, people will still find other ways, other aspects to be
POI.
insecure about later. Next, I'm going to talk about closing government. Closing government shot themselves in the foot by not explaining or denying the need to explain why if everyone should look similar or not. Look, I get it. Everyone is beautiful. I'm accepting that. But in this world, there has to be an objective way to measure that beauty. And in a reality where it has to be objectively equal, it has to be measured by height, by face shape, by body shape, by jawline. In order to have a world where everyone is equally objective, you would need a world where everyone is mostly physically similar. And that's going to bite them in the butt later in the second clash. Next, I'm going to talk about then what closing opposition has brought onto this table. Closing opposition talks about how uniqueness and individuality is core to how humanity feels attractive.
OG.
Hansen explained already to you how Miss Africa exemplifies and showcases the beauty standard of her culture, how she can work colors, fabric, and makeup with the physiology of her African descent and feel beautiful and identity from that. Uniqueness creates identity, and identity creates euphoria, a feeling of satisfaction that about yourself because you are who you are and no one else is you. The way you dress with the body you have, coloring your hair to fit your personality. That's what brings people happiness. You are you and no one else is you. I'm born short. I can't grow any facial hair and I've gotten bullied relentlessly for it. It sucked. But I can make myself feel great. I can feel attractive and feel euphoric by improving how I look. I wear pomade, I use some skincare products, etc. The difference between opening opposition here is that opening opposition wants to break that beauty standard, which is nice, but it's a bit idealistic and hard to achieve. Here in closing opposition, we bring a more reasonable way of achieving happiness even while falling under the beauty standards. I worked on myself and I made myself feel more beautiful to my own eyes. Am I now suddenly the same objective beauty level as prime Tom Cruise? No, I'm still short. I still have facial hair. I don't have his looks, but I do feel much better about myself. I am confident because I managed to take care of my body and make myself look better in my own eyes. You can compare yourself not to others, but to who you were a year ago. Opening government says that beauty products are unattainable for a lot of
POI.
people. Sure, this is true if you're talking about plastic surgery, heavy cosmetic alteration, etc. But everyday and impactful beauty products are readily available at varying economic levels. There are expensive products, cheaper ones, and middling ones. It is accessible to everyone. Why? because at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel beautiful. And yes, you can shit on capitalism here as much as you want, and I would agree with you, but that has also led to beauty products being available to all economic classes, and people can feel beautiful on all classes. Like Hansen said, Ma from a village can still feel beautiful because again, she
POI.
to Ariana Grande. She can compare herself to what she looks like a year ago and what she can afford and the people around her and what they look like. This is also why we win over OO or opening obsession. We embrace the segmentation of beauty, still providing the ability to feel beauty even while under this so-called beauty standards. OO is a bit idealistic in trying to break those standards instead. Before I move on, sure, OG?
Judges, the first problem with CO is how accessible that is to feel unique, because even rich people still feel insecure and some people still fear getting fat. Secondly, saying another kind of bully exists is not apple to apple as to why
That's
standards
enough.
should exist
Okay,
right on
thank
your
you for
side.
that. I understand that you will still want to compare yourself to others, and that's going to happen. But like I said, that's not going to go away in your world either. It's inexclusive at best from your side, because you will now start comparing yourself to others with their wealth, with their cultural background, with their entire country and where they were born. Which brings me to my second clash on which side provides a better social life for people. What closing opposition has brought here is taste. The key word is taste. Taste is what allows humans to have interest with one another. Each person has their own standards, their own taste. If everyone is equally objectively attractive, people don't have this neuron activation when they see in their eyes an attractive person. If you can even if you can form bonds in opening government and closing government, it becomes eventually meaningless. The purpose of forming relationships, both romantic and not, is that you are special to someone else. One of those things that makes others feel special is how they look to you. My significant other is special to me partly because of how she looks. One, they like how their SO looks according to their taste. Two, they're the only ones who look like that, and their SO looks special to them. When everyone objectively looks similar, people are less likely to find the people in their relationships any more special than others. Sure, my girlfriend is objectively attractive, but so is every single other person around her, and it's not the same. Oh, they're all attractive but different. They're all attractive and they're all similar. This extends outside of relationships and into how we treat others, form friendships. When I see someone cool, I want to be friends with them and I want to be like them. But when in a world where none of that uniqueness exists, I don't feel inspired to look at to be with someone who is exactly the same as me. This is something that's unique to closing opposition. Both government benches, on the other hand, lacks that friendship, the bonds, the relationship that you get by finding people you vibe with. We're not saying it's impossible, of course not, but it will be extremely difficult to seek these bonds, to form these bonds, and the willpower to chase it will be scarce. For those reasons, choose CO.
Right, thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of the debate. You can all stay here. Please do not leave the breakout room. In fact, all the judges will move with a sec. We are A10, so we can move to J10. Oh, there are already people there. Wait, let's move to J8. Okay, all the judges, let's move to J8. Yeah. Please wait approximately 20 minutes at maximum. We're going to deliberate. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Let me just stop the recording.